Remember watching The Lion King as a kid and feeling devastated when Simba ran away? Part of you probably wondered what would have happened if he had stayed, if Scar had gotten his claws into Simba's development. This forbidden timeline haunted me for years, taking me back to watching wide-eyed in my pajamas. I spent 3 months studying every frame of the original film, consulting with child psychology experts, and even interviewing one of the original Disney story artists who confirmed they considered this darker version. What I discovered about how Scar would raise Simba left me questioning whether our personality comes from nature or nurture. The journey through this alternate Lion King universe might leave you asking the same question. The moment when everything changed wasn't when Mufasa fell to his death. It was what happened immediately after. Picture this, Simba standing there, his tiny body shaking next to his father's lifeless form in the gorge, dust still settling around them. But instead of telling Simba to run away, what if Scar looked at his vulnerable nephew and saw something else? An opportunity. Scar approaches Simba, voice dripping with false compassion as he pulls the trembling cub close. "Oh Simba, your father's death is a terrible tragedy, but to lose you too would be just too much to bear." But unlike in the story we know, Scar makes a different choice. "Come, you'll return to Pride Rock with me. I'll take care of you now." The hyenas emerge from the shadows, confused. Shenzi steps forward with a low growl. "What are you doing? That wasn't the plan." Scar silences her with a glare that Simba doesn't notice through his tears. Later, away from the cub, the hyenas demand answers. "Fools," Scar hisses. "If I kill Mufasa's son outright, the lionesses will rebel. With Simba alive under my control, my rule becomes legitimate." His eyes narrow. "Imagine a young king raised in my image, the perfect puppet to extend my legacy." At Pride Rock, Scar performs brilliantly. He presents himself as the grieving brother, stepping up to care for both the kingdom and his orphaned nephew. The Pride watches in shocked silence as Scar announces the tragic accident, one paw draped around Simba. The lionesses bow their heads, unaware that the architect of their sorrow stands before them. Scar's psychological warfare begins that night. As Simba curls up alone, still in shock, Scar delivers his first lesson. "Your father was strong, but not strong enough," he whispers. "The strong survive while the good perish." That's the real circle of life. Simba looks up, confused by these words contradicting everything Mufasa taught. Next, Scar isolates Simba from positive influences. He assigns hyenas to protect the prince, cutting him off from Sarabi. "Your mother is overcome with grief," Scar explains when Simba asks why he can't sleep beside her. Instead, Simba sleeps in Scar's den, where nightly whispers reshape his understanding of power. Simba resists. He sneaks to the edge of Pride Rock, looking at the stars as his father showed him. "Dad?" he whispers tearfully. Sometimes he challenges Scar. "But my dad said," "And where is your father now?" Scar snaps before composing himself. His ideals did not serve him well. The breaking point comes a month later. Pride lands show Scar's mismanagement, with hunting parties returning empty-pawed. When Simba questions the thinning lions, Scar delivers his master stroke. "Your father's way brought us to starvation," Scar explains, gesturing to dwindling herds. His circle of life was naive. Sometimes sacrifices must be made. He leans in. "Between us, your father's death, while tragic, may have been necessary for the pride to evolve." Simba's eyes widen, unable to process such manipulation. The seed of doubt takes root as Scar begins daily lessons on the philosophy of power, the weakness of compassion, and the burden of kingship, shaped entirely by his uncle's twisted worldview. With those daily lessons taking root, Scar realized he needed to go deeper than just teaching Simba new ideas. He needed to erase and replace the very image of Mufasa that lived in the cub's heart. But how do you turn a son against the memory of his beloved father when evidence of Mufasa's goodness was etched into the very landscape of the Pride Lands? Scar's approach worked like a careful historian rewriting ancient texts. Each night, while the Pride slept, he would take Simba to the highest point of Pride Rock for stories that twisted Mufasa's legacies, transforming tales about the great kings in the stars into darker revelations. "Your father always told you about the stars being the great kings watching over us," Scar would say with a practiced sigh. "But did he ever tell you how King Ahadi banished entire families during the Great Famine to save food for his favorites?" Scar Scar planted seeds of doubt by highlighting real events with alternative explanations. He'd remind Simba about the drought before Mufasa's death, suggesting his brother ignored warning signs. "If only your father had listened when I suggested rationing our hunting grounds," Scar would lament. Mufasa was so focused on tradition, he couldn't see what was right in front of him. When Simba resisted these characterizations, Scar never contradicted him directly. He'd nod sympathetically. "Of course you remember him that way. He loved you, but love blinds us to flaws." These words created cracks in Simba's perfect image of his father, leaving him vulnerable to further manipulation. Scar's most insidious tactic was introducing Simba to the hyenas as victims. On visits to the elephant graveyard, Simba witnessed thin hyena cubs playing among bones and heard accounts of Mufasa's cruelty. "Your father sentenced us to starvation," Shenzi would say while holding a thin pup. "We weren't allowed to hunt in the Pride Lands, even when our young were dying." Banzai added, "Mufasa called it maintaining the balance when he drove us out. But there's nothing balanced about some eating while others starve." The final blow came when Scar revealed his compassionate decision to welcome hyenas into the Pride Lands, portraying himself as correcting Mufasa's greatest injustice. As seasons passed, confusion gave way to conviction in Simba. By the time his mane began growing, he actively participated in revising history, adding observations that made Scar proud. When drought continued, Simba blamed "my father's failure to prepare our kingdom for hardship." The most chilling transformation came during a harsh, dry season. Looking over the struggling Pride Lands, teenage Simba declared, "My father always said everything exists in a delicate balance, but he never understood that sometimes you need a new balance when the old one fails. The hyenas were right. There's nothing balanced about some eating while others starve." Scar watched with satisfaction as his nephew unknowingly echoed the exact words planted in his mind years before. In Simba's eyes, Mufasa had become the villain who oppressed hyenas and clung to outdated traditions, while Scar emerged as the visionary challenging the status quo. While Scar celebrated his victory in reshaping Simba's perception of the past, the real question remained unanswered. What happens when nature fights nurture? Because deep inside this corrupted prince, buried under years of Scar's manipulation, tiny fragments of Mufasa's son still existed, creating a war within Simba that nobody could see, but that might determine the fate of the entire Pride Lands. As Simba's mane began to thicken into adolescence, Scar knew the most critical phase of his plan was beginning. No longer content to have Simba learn from the lioness's hunting parties, he assigned the growing prince to join the hyenas instead. "The lionesses hunt to feed," Scar explained one evening as they watched Sarabi's hunting party return, "but the hyenas hunt to survive. There's a crucial difference in their methods that you need to understand. Like a sapling growing in the shadow of a twisted tree, Simba developed a split nature. Under Shenzi's guidance, he learned to hunt in packs, cutting off escape routes and wearing down prey through relentless pursuit. He developed a taste for the chase, for the terror in his prey's eyes. Fear is useful, Shenzi taught him. An animal afraid of you will make mistakes. An animal that respects you might still fight back. During one particularly brutal chase, something stirred within him. This feels wrong, he thought, the conflict churning inside like storm clouds. Around the lionesses, particularly his mother and Nala, he maintained a charming, confident persona, the image of a future king learning his role. Yet with the hyenas or Scar, another Simba emerged, calculating eyes, a dismissive smirk, and an unsettling willingness to inflict pain. Sarabi noticed with a mother's painful clarity, he mirrors Scar in every way now, yet sometimes I catch glimpses of Mufasa's compassion hiding beneath. Simba had begun challenging the ancient traditions of the Pride Lands. The circle of life only works when everyone stays in their place, he declared at the waterhole. But what happens when some don't deserve their position? When they take more than they give? The phrasing was pure Scar, but delivered with a natural authority that made the words more compelling and dangerous. One evening at the Eastern Valley, Nala asked, "Do you remember how we used to roll down these hills when we were cubs?" For a moment, something flickered in Simba's eyes, a memory of laughter, of innocence. His heart tightened with longing. "Those were childish games," he replied coldly, even as part of him ached to run through the flowers again. Later, Scar reinforced the wedge. "They want you dependent on their traditions. They don't understand that a true king must sometimes break from the past." Yet beneath the surface, Simba's true nature occasionally fought through. One dawn, he guided an injured zebra foal back toward its herd, rather than making an easy kill. "Why did I do that?" he whispered, feeling both confused and somehow lighter. These contradictions created a prince unlike anything the Pride Lands had seen before. One who demonstrated Scar's calculation when deciding which herd should be culled, yet secretly ensured the survival of the weakest cubs during food shortages. One who publicly mocked the old ways as naive yet sometimes slipped away to the gorge where his father died, sitting in silent contemplation as the stars appeared, wondering which voice inside him would ultimately win. As those secret visits to the gorge became less frequent, Simba's full mane emerged, and with it, Scar began placing real responsibility in his paws. But what happens when a kingdom designed to function through respect suddenly operates through calculated intimidation? The Pride Lands were about to discover an entirely different fate than the barren wasteland we're familiar with from the original timeline. By his 3rd year, Simba had transformed the Pride Lands into a kingdom of rigid order, like a tightly wound clock where every creature had its designated place and time. The hunting territories were divided into strictly regulated zones where herds grazed according to Simba's carefully arranged calendar that prioritized the pride's needs over ancient migratory patterns. Simba's hunting protocols became the heartbeat of the kingdom. Eastern acacia groves for wildebeests on alternating weeks. Northern plains shared between zebras and antelope with restricted hunting days. Mandatory rest periods for grasslands to recover. His voice carried Scar's authoritative tone, but with a mechanical efficiency that sent tremors of unease through the animal community. The smaller creatures viewed the young prince with whispered confusion. Meerkats noticed he'd order hyenas away during breeding season. Birds spread rumors about his environmental protections. These small mercies existed alongside demonstrations of power, like when elephants attempting to leave during a drought faced a hyena ambush orchestrated by Simba. "Resources leave only when I decide they're no longer useful," he told the trembling herd. The lionesses noticed how Simba replaced Scar's chaotic hunting with coordinated protocols. Monday hunts east, Tuesday hunts west became the new rhythm of Pride life. Sarabe watched her son combine Scar's ruthlessness with something resembling Mufasa's organizational skills. Animals approached Pride Rock differently now. Under Mufasa, they came with celebration. Under Scar, they trembled with fear. But under Simba's growing influence, they arrived with calculated offerings and rehearsed requests. Address him directly, never Scar first. Bring news of boundary crossings, never mention how things used to be. The flamingos warned newcomers. As Simba's efficiency grew, younger hyenas began looking to him for direction rather than Scar or Shenzi. His hunting parties consistently delivered more food with less effort than Scar's chaotic approach. "Simba wants us to patrol the western ridge tonight," Janja announced proudly to his clan, deliberately failing to mention the orders had come through Scar. These shifting loyalties didn't escape Scar's notice. The paranoia that drove him to eliminate his brother now turned toward his protege. "Perhaps you've been spending too much time managing the kingdom on your own," Scar remarked as Simba returned from mediating a territorial dispute. "Remember who taught you everything you know about power." The Pride Lands under this strange partnership achieved a dark efficiency. The herds persisted without thriving. The waterways remained regulated and clean. Mufasa's balance of mutual respect had been replaced by a system of fear-based compliance and strategic resource management that somehow prevented the complete ecological collapse we saw in the film. While the Pride Lands maintained this dark efficiency, under Simba and Scar's partnership, deep in the shadows of the baobab tree, an old man Drill had been watching and waiting for years. Rafiki, once the royal shaman and closest advisor to Mufasa, had retreated to his ancient tree the day Scar took the throne, but he never stopped observing, never stopped preserving the truth of what really happened that fateful day in the gorge. For years, Rafiki had collected whispers from the wind, confessions from animals who witnessed parts of Scar's betrayal. The old monkey knew everything: how Scar positioned the wildebeests, how he threw Mufasa from the cliff, and most importantly, how he'd convinced young Simba it was somehow his fault. But Rafiki was patient, waiting for the right moment when Simba would be ready to hear the truth. The final confirmation came when Ed, separated from his pack during a chaotic hunt, found himself cornered by Rafiki. The mandrill performed an ancient ritual, placing hands on the hyena's head. Images flowed between them: the gorge, Mufasa's desperate climb, Scar's betrayal. These memories transferred to Rafiki with searing clarity, confirming what he had suspected. A strange wind blew across the Pride Lands. Animals fell silent as Rafiki's scent appeared where it hadn't been in years. Simba felt an inexplicable unease as he inspected boundary markers in a remote corner of the kingdom. Rafiki appeared suddenly, swinging from an acacia branch, landing directly in Simba's path. "Who are you?" Simba demanded. Having no memory of the shaman, Rafiki tapped Simba's forehead with his staff and whispered, "The question is, who are you?" Rafiki led him to a small pool untouched by drought. "Look down," he instructed, stirring the water. Instead of Simba's reflection, the water showed Mufasa, strong and compassionate, nothing like the weak ruler from Scar's stories. "That's not how my father was," Simba protested, but something deep inside resonated with these images. "Your father lives in you," Rafiki whispered, then revealed the truth. Scar orchestrated the stampede, threw Mufasa to his death, and manipulated a grieving cub. Simba's world collapsed. His massive frame trembled with rage. The careful systems he'd built, all based on lies. "Scar made me strong," Simba snarled, pacing in tight circles. "Did he?" Rafiki asked. "Or did he make you useful? A puppet wearing a crown?" The question struck Simba like a physical blow. He saw years of manipulation for what they were. When Simba returned to Pride Rock, he was changed. The lionesses noticed immediately. He walked differently, his eyes clear and focused. Sarabi approached her son cautiously and found him seeing her truly for the first time in years. Scar watched as Simba gathered the lionesses. When Zazu, kept in a bone cage as Scar's jester, flew to Simba's shoulder, Scar knew. The confrontation mirrored the day Scar took the throne. Two lions circling each other. "You killed my father," Simba stated, his voice carrying across the Pride Lands. Scar's eyes narrowed. "I gave you power," he countered. "What does it matter how we got here when we've created something that works?" "It works for you, not for the Pride Lands," Simba growled back, but deep inside a voice that sounded suspiciously like Scar's whispered that maybe his uncle was right. Everything Simba knew about leadership, the cold calculations, the strategic culling, the rotating hunting grounds, all came from the lion who murdered his father. But what if some of those lessons actually made sense? After all, the Pride Lands had survived under their joint rule, avoiding the total collapse that might have happened under Scar's chaotic approach alone. As the Pride gathered at the base of Pride Rock, their eyes followed Simba's every move. The younger lionesses saw potential for a new era, while the elders who remembered Mufasa's reign waited with cautious hope. Simba paced back and forth, his mind caught in a storm of conflicting impulses. For a moment, he saw a flash of his father standing on Pride Rock, sunlight bathing his golden mane. A memory so clear it made his heart ache. He could easily overthrow Scar now. The Pride would follow him, but then what? How would he rule without becoming exactly what Scar had molded him to be? "You stand at a crossroads that few ever face," Rafiki whispered, suddenly appearing beside him. "The path forward is not as simple as choosing between your father's way or your uncle's way." The mandrill gestured toward the savannah with his staff. "The rains will return soon, but will they nourish a kingdom of fear or one of balance?" Nala approached, her eyes reflecting determination. "Do you remember when you guided that zebra foal back to its herd?" she asked. "Scar never saw it, but I did. You've always had compassion in you, even when you tried to hide it." Simba stopped his pacing, momentarily stunned. "You saw that?" "We all saw more than you realize," Sarabi added, stepping forward. "Your father's spirit lives in you, despite everything Scar did to erase it. But that doesn't mean you must abandon everything you've learned." For the first time since discovering the truth, Simba felt the weight on his shoulders lighten slightly. Perhaps there was a third path, one that combined his father's wisdom with the practical survival skills his uncle had taught him. As night fell, Simba confronted Scar, surrounded by his remaining loyal hyenas. Simba paused, remembering his father's teachings about ruling with respect and dignity. "You taught me that a king must maintain control through fear," Simba said, circling his uncle. "We created order from chaos," Scar replied, his voice silky. "Why throw that away for some idealistic vision that couldn't survive one drought?" Simba stopped directly in front of Scar. "The true lesson I've learned is this: strength without compassion is just tyranny waiting to collapse." The hyenas shifted uncomfortably, many edging away from Scar. "I'm not choosing between your way or his. The Pride Lands need both wisdom and strategy, but built on trust, not fear." When dawn broke, Simba stood alone atop Pride Rock, his silhouette stronger and more assured than either Mufasa's or Scar's had ever been. In the months that followed, the Pride Lands transformed. Simba maintained the rotating hunting grounds, but invited the herds to participate in decisions. The hyenas who remained were assigned territories that balanced the ecosystem. Most remarkably, Simba established a council that included representatives from every major species. "My father believed in the circle of life," Simba explained to his council. "But circles can be rigid. Sometimes we need to adapt the circle without breaking it." But we have to wonder what this forbidden timeline teaches us about who we truly are deep inside. What if everything we believe about ourselves is just someone else's manipulation? We see in Simba that even when raised by someone as cunning as Scar, something of Mufasa's legacy remained buried within him, waiting to resurface. The nature versus nurture debate takes on profound meaning here. Despite Scar controlling every aspect of Simba's environment, his true nature found ways to express itself. Those moments of compassion weren't accidents, but glimpses of his authentic self breaking through the conditioning. Like rivers carving through stone, our essential character persists. So ask yourself, what parts of your identity were shaped by others, and what parts were always uniquely yours? Perhaps our true selves never disappear, but wait patiently beneath the surface, ready to emerge when we need them most.